The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. The following video is presented by the Center for Educational Media in partnership with Professional Educators of Tennessee's Leader U Conference. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
Good morning. How you guys doing today? You ready? Okay, well, I'm supposed to introduce the keynote speaker, but I haven't seen him yet. So I guess I'll talk slowly, and hopefully we'll see him come through the door here in just a second. Last year, when Dr. Woodard did a session on keeping hope alive in our schools, he was so highly rated on the exit survey that he was asked back to do the keynote this year for 2018. So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Woodard. Dr. Ron Woodard is the Assistant Superintendent of Instruction for Maury County Public Schools. Prior to that, he was the executive principal of Metro Nashville Public Schools Maplewood High School for 5 years, and 1 year as the assistant principal. Hold on a second. Sorry. Before serving at Maplewood High School, Woodard was an assistant principal of Whites Creek High School for 3 years. He also taught science at Wright Middle School for 4 years, where he served as the program director for the Teen Mentoring Program. Hold on, sorry. So embarrassing. I hate it when that happens. He has expertise in the areas of developing climate and culture in schools, building capacity and effective teams, and school turnaround. Woodard's undergraduate degree comes to the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. I'm just going to stick this up here so it just stops buzzing in my pocket, where he earned a Bachelor of Science degree in biology. His master's in educational administration comes from Tennessee State University in Nashville, and his doctorate in education was completed at Lipscomb University in Nashville. Hey, Noah, I just got a message that you're supposed to play a video. Can you play a video? Okay.
Man, who are you? What are you doing? What is this place?
You know who I am.
Ryan.
Wrong!
Why are you doing this?
I'm Brian Jackson, the twin brother of Brian Jackson. You mentored him for 5 years. You never mentored me one day.
Ryan, you've gone crazy, man.
What's going crazy is you think you're gonna go to Leadership U and mentor all these folks? You're gonna stay right here. You're not mentoring anybody else. You never helped me, now you won't help anybody.
Ryan.
Enjoy this closet.
Ryan, you're going crazy, man. You gotta get me out of here.
I'll do the keynote at Leader U.
You gotta get me out of here, man.
I'm Brian Jackson. I've kidnapped Dr. Woodard and he will not be delivering a keynote this morning at Leader U. Everybody can just pick up and go home. There will be no keynote this morning.
I gotta get out of here. I gotta get to Leader U. Don't worry, folks. You'll see me Leader U. I'm not gonna let you down. I'll be there.
Has anybody seen Dr. Woodard? Does anybody know where Dr. Woodard is? Is Brian Jackson coming up to do the keynote? Does anybody know? Without further ado, your keynote speaker, Dr. Ron Woodard.
How's it going? All right, how's it going? All right, is this thing on? Testing 1, 2, testing 1, 2. Can you guys hear me okay? All right, how'd you like that video? Nothing like starting, June with something corny, right? I've been back there the whole time. Oh my goodness, I am just so honored to be here. So first let me say thank you to Bethany and JC Bowman for all their support and for allowing me to be here with you this morning. I'm extremely excited about being here this morning. Also, my wife is here. Cicely Woodard is here. I'm trying to find Cicely. Where are you, Cicely? Okay, there she is in the back. Cicely. Awesome educator for Tennessee. She's here as well to support. Also, I want to say that I give honor to God. I would not be standing here today without what God has done in my life and the favor that He's imposed upon my life. So I'm just extremely happy to be here with you today. Also, you're going to hear from some amazing presenters today. And so I also want to salute all of my colleagues who are presenters at this amazing conference also as well. So I'm excited about what you guys are going to do. Also, last but not least, I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come and hear me. You must not have had anything else to do. You must be extremely bored to come hear me. But hey, thank you anyway, and thank you for your support. So hopefully you guys are not into what we call the breakfast coma, okay? So this is how this is gonna work. You give me good energy, this goes real well, okay? But if you give me that stale morning energy, I'm gonna talk and run my mouth all morning long. All right, so I want some good energy from you today. And a couple of amens every now and then. Let's start with one, amen? Amen. All right, so every now and then we may have a little church in here, so this is gonna be all right, okay? So this is gonna be my version of kind of a low budget TED Talk, so just bear with me, I'm not there yet. So, I've been prepping for this speech for a couple of weeks now, and I've been thinking to myself, what can I do to get really fired up and pumped up? And, I was a high school wrestler, so as a high school wrestler, before you go on, you jump around and you jump rope and you smack yourself and you listen to good music like Metallica, and I listened to stuff like that when I was in high school. So I was thinking today, what music could I listen to now that I'm in my mid-40s that would get me pumped up and excited and ready to go on for today? And I thought to myself, man, what can I listen to in my mid-40s, and something good and mellow and calm and smooth and soothing, somebody that has wisdom and knowledge. And I thought, who better than Cardi B? I'm just kidding. So at your tables right now, you should have an index card or something at your table. And I want you to write a narrative. I want you to just take 1 minute and write a narrative about how you think I escaped. How did I get away from the evil Brian Jackson, who was the alter ego of Ryan Jackson, who keynoted last year? So at your tables, just take 1 minute and write a narrative, and after that, we'll get started. 1 minute, go. All right, showtime, here we go. So there's no secret that America's fascinated with superheroes. I mean, if you think about what's been happening lately with all the Marvel movies, and we are just infatuated with superheroes. But none of these superheroes ever come into the schools and do this great, amazing work in schools. So we are kind of the superheroes that really exist, that we do the hard work that has to be done to change lives. But there's so many superheroes going on and so many superhero films happening right now that's really just fascinating to me. But everyone loves Superman. Everyone does. He's great. And so, in essence, I thought to myself, who has more of a champion mindset than Superman? I mean, essentially, he's great looking, he's strong, he's powerful, and essentially nothing can stop him. I mean, the guy's unstoppable. So we thought. So here's what's interesting about Superman. In 1949, Kryptonite was introduced. And the purpose of Kryptonite was to change the narrative. I mean, if Superman always wins, the story kind of gets old. And so they introduced Kryptonite in 1949 to kind of give Superman a little bit of a weakness, because if not, the narrative would not ever change. And so it would make the story boring, and if he always wins, people would just eventually lose interest in America's favorite hero. So if we're being honest, all of us have a weakness. All of us do. We all have some weaknesses. And if we're being totally honest, some of us may even have several weaknesses. And so as human beings, it is a survival skill to mitigate risk and to be keenly aware of what your weaknesses are. And kids do this as well. So now let's view this conversation under the lens of academics, where we talk about weaknesses for kids with regard to academic success for students. For some students, the lack of academic confidence and personal confidence has become their kryptonite, commonly referred to as what I call low self-efficacy. So can you imagine being in a place every day, all day long, 6.5 hours or more, being in a place where you feel absolutely inferior? Can you imagine having to come to a place where you feel like you're lower than or less than other kids because you don't do well academically? These feelings elevate the anxiety that some kids every day, and it really makes kids miserable at school. There are literally hundreds of thousands of kids who identify with this experience. And for some kids, this experience is what we call school every day. So for decades, educators have been trying to figure out what is the psychological impact of kids not succeeding in school. And no one has analyzed that better than Dr. William Glasser. In his study, In Schools Without Failure in 1969, he psychoanalyzed what failure did to students, and here's what he discovered. He said that students who did not succeed at school internalized that because they didn't succeed at school, they felt that they could not be successful at any other aspects of life. So imagine that, just giving up on all parts of life because you think that you're not good in school. And believe it or not, we learned that 50 years ago, and he was right. He was dead on. So folks, through this conversation this morning, I'm merely proposing that there are a number of root causes to the reason why kids are not successful in school. However, I believe that low self-efficacy is at the top of that list, and there's some things that we have to do about that. So, when you think about school, people know who the bright kids are, and they're keenly aware that they're the brightest kids in school. And the kids who don't perform well in school know who they are. And they're very, very keenly aware of how they're perceived. So the driving question that I pose to you today is, how do we create an atmosphere in schools where all children can thrive academically while simultaneously enhancing their social, emotional well-being as well? I want you to think about that for a minute. So lesson number one is that we have to absolutely change the narrative. So I want you to look at these kids for a minute, okay? Just take a look at some children I'm going to show you. So, some children come to us and they may be immigrants who are fleeing oppression in other countries, and they struggle with the language barrier. Some children come to us and they are native sons who just need guidance and they need hope. Some kids come to us and they are living in impoverished conditions where they desperately need the resources and the support that school can provide. And so regardless of where our kids come from and how they come to us, society has predisposed some children that come from poverty or that come from adverse situations. Society has predisposed them to not doing well. Society has predisposed kids to a life of poverty or low wages and even possibly incarceration just because of where they come from. And so you've heard this said time and time again that demography cannot be destiny. And so it's so critical that we don't let demography determine the destiny for kids. And I'm going to say to you today, very definitively, boldly, that as champions for children, we must end the soft bigotry of low expectations for kids in poverty. Amen? We must end the soft bigotry of low expectations for kids in poverty. It is our responsibility to take kids from where they are and to make them academically successful. That's what champions do. And that means it's going to be tough. That means it's going to be hard work, but that's what we have to do. And whether you're a classroom teacher, guidance counselor, if you're a school administrator, that is the job that we're tasked to do, and we have to get after it every day. Amen? It's our job to get after that every day, and that's to change the lives of kids. So regardless of what your role is, I'm going to challenge you today to understand that all means all. Change the narrative, okay? Change the narrative in your school or in your organization to it can be done. Change the narrative in your school to lives will be changed. Change the narrative in your organization to every child every day. No matter what you do, as an agent of change, I'm asking you to get out there and change the narrative, change the landscape for a child. So I want to show you a slide of how we help change the narrative. You can look at some kids and look at where some kids come from, and you'll be amazed at what they can go through and how they can overcome that. Because ultimately we want them to look like this, regardless of where they come from. Amen? Regardless of where you come from, where you're born, what side of tracks you're born from, this is what we want as an ultimate goal. But this is how we changed the mantra at Maplewood High School. So I took over a school that was high poverty, low performing school. I took over 1 year after a student had been murdered at commencement back in 2010 at the TSU Gentry Center. Dr. Jesse Register was superintendent at the time, and he asked me to come in and take over a school that was having some real difficulties. So I was principal at Apollo Middle School and then transferred over to Maplewood High School. When I get there, I got a blank canvas. Bare white walls. The place felt hopeless. The school was dingy. It was a place that didn't feel like hope. So one of the first things we started doing is coming in and painting quotes on the wall. And I remember one day I was on top of a ladder, and we had this real high catwalk in the school. And at the catwalk, I painted this inscription on top of the catwalk. And so I wanted people to see this when they first came into the school. And you can see what it says. Lives will be changed in this school every day. Okay? This is how we started changing the narrative. Okay? So now when you walk into that school, this is the message that we wanted parents to see. That we want to change your child's life. And that lives will be changed every day. Period. That's the mantra. We want teachers to understand that in this school, lives will be changed every day. We wanted students to understand that we're here to change your life and to impact you in some way every single day. And that's just one of the ways that we started changing the narrative. The second way that we started changing the narrative is through what we were saying to kids, okay? I am a very religious person, so please bear with me if I give you a little bit of faith. It just means that you had church on Friday and you get to go on Sunday, amen? You get a little bit of both. I'm gonna give you a little bit of both. Since we're at Trevecca and this is a religious institution, I can talk about God here. Can I do that? Am I at home, folks? Can I do that? So the word says that faith cometh by what? Hearing. Faith cometh by hearing. So what we say to kids will impact them. And so in our morning announcements, we started saying positive things and positive affirmations in our sayings, in our morning announcements. And so it would sound like this. I'd say, good morning, students. Welcome back to the greatest school in the whole wide world. And then they hear me in my announcements by saying, we love you, we believe in you, and we know you can be successful. That's how we ended it. Let's have a great Panther Day. Okay, now let's analyze what we're saying here. Good morning, students. Welcome back to the greatest school in the whole world. Kids who went to that high school internalized that it was a bad school and they were forced to go there because of the zoning. That's what they believed. Okay, so we started changing the narrative. Okay, yes, this is your zone school. Yes, it had not been a great school, but we're going to change the narrative. It's going to be a great school. Okay, then we started speaking life over kids by saying, we love you, we believe in you, and we know that you can be successful. They heard that every single morning, and every single afternoon. We love you, we believe in you, and we know you can be successful. Let's have a great Panther Day. In the afternoon, we love you, we believe in you, and we know you can be successful. Guys, have a great afternoon. Every single day, we love you, we believe in you, and we know that you can be successful. That is how we started changing the narrative. And if faith cometh by hearing, eventually they started believing what we're saying. And we saw a difference in the culture of that school because of just starting to change the narrative. And that's how we started that. So that's just one step of how we started changing the narrative. And so I want to move on here and talk about 1987. Some of you in this room were not born in 1987. That's okay. Some of you were around during that time, and I was definitely around during that time. And I want to talk about what happened in 1987. First off, Ronald Reagan was president in 1987. The average household income at that time was about $25,000. A gallon of gas, and folks will never see these days again. A gallon of gas, folks, 89 cents. I don't know if we'll ever see those days again, but it was 89 cents. A postage stamp was 24 cents. And the most popular car at the time was what? You guessed it. A Ford Escort was the most popular car at that time. But what I remember most about 1987 was not all of those things. But what I remember most about 1987 was that it was the first time that a person that looked like me actually discouraged me, a teacher. The first African-American male teacher that I had in middle school said these words to me. He said to me that you will be lucky if you ever live to see your 21st birthday. How devastating is that for a kid that had my background? And you may be wondering, well, what is your background? And I'll get to that in just a minute. But how devastating for a kid that's 12 years old to hear those words from a person that is supposed to be a role model. The first time I have a teacher that looks like me says these words to me, and I was actually one of the good kids, but I'm hearing this. Really devastated me. So here I am in my mid-40s, and I've never forgotten that statement, and that statement always fueled me to want to be successful. So what that teacher didn't know was that I had some real adversity in my life. And so here's a lesson here. Before you make an assumption about a student, about a child, no matter what they're dealing with, know the backstory. Before you make an assumption about a student, get the backstory. Find out what's going on before you make a declarative statement. Learn their backstory. Seek first to understand. Learn the backstory about a kid. Here's what that teacher didn't know about Ron Woodard. Ron Woodard had just lost his grandmother, and it was my maternal grandmother. For whatever reason, I think that a lot of people are typically closer to their mother's mother. But I was really close to my mother's mother, my grandmother, maternal grandmother. She had just passed away a few months earlier than when that statement happened. What he also didn't know was that 2 years prior to that, my grandfather was murdered in a robbery in East Nashville in 1985. So my grandmother had passed away, and 2 years before that, my grandfather had been murdered in 1985, okay, over in East Nashville. What the teacher did not know is that also my father, well, there's a song that would describe him. I think it was maybe the OJ's or Temptations. It was a song, Papa was a Rolling Stone. Wherever he laid his hat was his home, okay? So my father was not there. So the first man that I can identify with tells me that essentially I'll be nothing. So I had no mother, I had no father, no grandfather, and no grandmother, and a mother that was working 2 jobs to support me and my brother, okay? So if anybody needed a role model, if anybody needed someone to care, if anybody needed some support, it was this student, okay? One that he had discouraged, and he probably never knew the damage that he caused, but I was determined to not let those words make me bitter and angry. I used it as fuel to be successful. On top of that, this teacher didn't know that I was 3rd generation poverty. And what that means is that my grandmother, my mother, and I were all born and or lived in public housing. And we lived in the John Henry Hale housing community over in North Nashville. But this teacher didn't know my backstory. And yet those powerful words were said to me as a 12-year-old child. Devastating words. My grandmother had an 8th grade education. My mother completed high school, and I became the first person in my immediate family to actually attend and complete college. I grew up in a household where there were 27 books, a set of World Book encyclopedias, and a Holy Bible on the coffee table. That's it. I'm being honest with you. That's it. A set of World Books and a Holy Bible. That's it. Okay? Have to be honest with you. I didn't get read bedtime stories. Wasn't a happy childhood like that. Nobody read me bedtime stories. Everybody was working. It was a working class family. People were tired when they came home. I didn't see people reading in my home, with the exception of maybe the daily newspaper. That was about it. Okay? So that didn't happen in my household. Now, you may have kids that come to your school or that are in your organization that have the same circumstances or worse. You know, back in the mid-'80s, that might have been rare, right? My story would have been rare. But is it rare today? No. You may have 6 out of 10 kids who have the same circumstances that I grew up with, if not worse, in their lifetimes. And we have to be prepared to teach these students and to make these students successful, regardless of the adversity that they face in their households. So, you know, something strange happens to kids right around middle school. I was a middle school principal, so I know this very well. Kids begin to struggle with their identity, and it becomes a really, really big deal. Kids really struggle with identity. So lesson 2 in this thing is this, okay? Here's lesson 2. Help children develop a positive self-image. Right around middle school, they really start to change. You really see some strange changes going on. We often call it hormones, but what a lot of it is that right around middle school, kids are trying to find the identity, okay? Where do I fit in? Am I popular, or am I going to be the kind of kid that's more of a strong athlete, or will I run with the smart crowd, or am I more of an athlete or a mathlete, or am I in the chess club kind of group, or where do I fit in? Kids are really struggling at this point to figure out what is going on in their lives. We also start to see in middle school that kids start making gender preference choices. Am I right about it? Amen? They start figuring out what they like around middle school. So the key is helping children discover their identity so that we can build strong character for those kids. That's the key. You know, I remember telling kids in middle school, hang in there. This will be all right. You're not a loser, okay? It's not that you're not smart. You learn differently, okay? Yes, girls will eventually like you. Yes, you will find love eventually, even if you don't have muscles or if you don't have pecs or a six-pack. It may take a little longer, but yes, you will find love. But keep going. So we tell kids, keep going, keep fighting through adversity, just keep going. Educators, please do not underestimate the power that identity has for young people. Kids today are more influenced by social media than any other generation that we've ever seen, amen? Social media is so powerful. Kids are so in tune with what their peers think of them that it absolutely consumes their lives. And it's so important that the adults and positive adults have more of an influence in their lives than what social media and their friends are saying, because kids really take it to heart what other people think about them. They're so into how many likes I have and who likes me on Facebook, who's my friend. They're really into this, and we have to make sure that we have a louder voice in this than they do. And folks, those of you who have children of your own, I'm a parent, I have 2 sons. It's so important that we as parents also have a louder voice in our kids' lives than social media and their friends. Amen? It's so important that we have the louder voice. So it was a Cambridge University study that came out, and they psychoanalyzed 30 students. And they looked at whether or not these students had suicidal ideation, and they found a strong link between suicidal ideation and identity formation for adolescents. Really strong link. And here's what they found. They found that the lack and inability to establish what they call continuity and forward progress, coupled with their lack of identity, was a leading determinant in whether or not kids decided to commit suicide. And they looked at 30 kids who had either considered contemplating suicide or kids who had unsuccessful attempts. And what they found was this. Let me just break this down for you, okay? What they really found was, it was, who am I? I don't know who I am. I just don't feel like I belong. And number 2, where am I going? Kids who felt like they just didn't have a future or hope. They couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? For whatever reason, they just could not figure out where their future was headed. And because things were bad now, they assumed that things would stay like they are now, and they decided or tried to end it or decided to end it, okay? Those were the types of kids that they studied. And they found, again, that identity and the lack of forward progress was what was hurting so many kids, making them want to hurt themselves. One of my favorite people is a guy named Bill Strickland. He's got a great TED Talk, and he is a community activist, and he's a philanthropist. And he says this. He says that you have to change the way people see themselves before you can change their behavior. How powerful is that? He said you must change the way that people see themselves before you can change their behavior. And I so agree with him on that we have to help kids see themselves differently. We have to find out more about kids and what they're doing. What are their interests? What are their career goals? What are their hobbies? What are their likes, dislikes? Help them figure out what they're good at, where they're going. Motivate them and even tell them, great job. Make a big deal about small things. Maybe a kid went from an F to a D, but just give a kid a little encouragement. Hey, good job. This is not where we want you to be, but hey, great job. Keep pushing. You can get there. It's so important. So we'll take a break right now. And I want you to talk with an elbow partner, and I'm going to give you a couple minutes to talk. I want you to talk about how can you improve low self-efficacy for students in your organization. And we'll take a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to get someone to walk around with the mic. I think I'm going to put my boss to work, Dr. Malzak. He's going to grab a microphone, and the microphone's in the back, and we'll take a couple of responses. So I know you guys thought I was going to do all the work, but joke's on you today. So talk with your table partners. How can we improve low self-efficacy for students in your organization? 5 minutes, go. So we'll take a couple of responses. Who'd like to respond? Share out. Just a few responses. Just want to hear what you think. And if you don't volunteer somebody soon, I'm going to call on you.
Yeah, who's going to be the brave one? Come on. Where are the leaders in the room?
Here we are, right here. There we go. The volunteer state. Somebody volunteered.
I did. So I'll stand up, and I don't know if I need a mic. There you go. Thank you. Okay. So my situation is very different. I am a director of the education program at the Tennessee Prison for Women and principal of the school. And so we are sort of implementing andragogical practices as opposed to pedagogy. What I have found that everything that Dr. Woodard is saying is pretty much the truth. We have the end result of that bad role modeling experiences in life, and they've ended up in prison. And so we get them in to our program where they can study for their high school equivalency, or we have CTE programs, we have full complement, and they can also study and get their college degree through Lipscomb University. So we contend with this mostly with those high-set classes of adults coming in, whether they want to or not. The governor said this is what you're going to do. they have had very bad experiences. They don't believe in themselves. And so with that research, with andragogical practices, with adults, and I've seen it work even outside of that particular environment with adults, is that you have to allow for them the opportunity to have those successes that they did not have in school because they have had really bad experiences. So those little bit successes that you've evaluated where they need to be, they have to have privacy. They definitely have to have privacy because remember, they have adult experiences. These are adults. So we do use technology in order to help with that aspect of it. We use individual conferencing so that we do individualized instructional practices with them, plan it, differentiated instruction. We have to have those one-on-one conversations with them. So it takes a lot of time. However, what we found once we get them into the mode of looking at their data, taking ownership of their learning, and then giving them those successes that they've never had before, then we can see them jump 2-3 grade levels at a time within a short amount of time. So that it's a different situation. I've worked in public schools and I'm aware of what the children go through as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anybody else? We'll take one more. Anybody else? Right here.
No, don't give up on mine.
So sorry.
Go, Nick.
When I started teaching, I went intercity school and just enjoyed that. And so I grew up with all boys. I have 3 brothers and a dad. I still don't know if my dad's ever said I love you. We get along great, but we just didn't do that. And then I had a daughter, and so I have a 13-year-old, and she needed me to tell her I loved her quite a bit.
That's it.
And so I started usually on Fridays. So guys, when you go home this weekend, I want you to know I care about you, I love you, be careful, all that. And so I did that, and then one Friday I just, for whatever reason, forgot. And so I had several young men that I was surprised that came up and said, Mr. Lewis, you didn't tell us you loved us today. And it struck me like that it really did matter to them.
Oh, yeah.
So now, as a principal, I try it at least a couple times a week. Something similar to what you were saying at the end of the day. I'll say, I want you to know you're valued. We care that you are, part of the school, and that I love you. And I think, just especially coming from a male, that somebody that fusses at them at other times and
It's
things,
key.
that they need to hear that. So.
Yes, sir. Great comment. One more.
So I teach actually at a pretty affluent, high achievement school, and I think that the mindset at our school is that we don't have those students. We don't have poverty students sprinkled in amongst our students, and I found that was completely not true. So in my room, I have 2 rules. The first one is that you are going to make mistakes, and I look for your mistakes. I expect mistakes. And the second one is that I tell all of my students that I want them to give 110%. And I explain that to them, that they always will give their 100%, and that's what they feel is 100%, but I believe in them, and I know that they can always better themselves and do more. So I'm asking them to push themselves beyond their boundaries and give me an extra 10%, and they'll be close to their true 100% potential. So my kids always leave knowing that they can try a little bit harder and they can push a little bit further. And then I always do an activity a couple of months into the school year after they've kind of built their trust and relationship with me. And I send out an anonymous note card, and they turn those back in. And I tell them I want them to give me one thing that they wish their teacher knew that affects their learning every single day, that maybe not even their parents know happens. And that's the most powerful 5 minutes I've ever given to my classroom, because my students come out with some unbelievable things. Kids that you would never think struggle day to day with anxiety or a bad home life, or dad went to rehab for a little while or something like that. And I can clue into that, and I don't bring that out in class, and it's completely confidential, but it allows me to view that student in a different way and to know that there are struggles beyond the classroom.
Excellent. Thank you. So moving on, we're going to get into lesson 3. Lesson 3 is about creating opportunities for kids to succeed. So I'm going to get into this. What do we know about kids? Every kid won't be the star athlete. We know that. Every kid can't be the quarterback. Every kid won't start on the basketball team or make the cheerleading squad. But we have to create pockets of excellence in our schools so that every student can find a place to belong. And Abraham Maslow said that no human being will reach self-actualization without first discovering love and a sense of belonging and a sense of esteem. And so pockets of excellence looks like this: clubs, activities, events, extracurriculars, programs, and things that kids can be involved in. And so the key question is does your school offer something for every kid to be involved in? So just think about that. And so I want to use Maplewood as a case study once again and show you a couple of slides. One of the things that we did first was we had a problem with our college going rate, and the college acceptance rate was pretty poor. At that time, it was somewhere around 58%. A lot of kids would take the ACT, they wouldn't do well in the ACT, and then they would internalize that, hey, because I didn't get the an entry-level score to get into a good college, that's it for me. I'll just go and settle for whatever job I can find after high school. And so we get in there and we start working with kids, and then we start trying to push them and prod them to get them to take the test again, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. So I partnered with Martha O'Brien, and we created a center that we call the College Zone. And so what we were doing college and career advising all day long. And so Martha O'Brien would bring in AmeriCorps members, and these AmeriCorps members would assist my guidance team, and then we would provide and do college access work all day from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at night, okay? And there was a sister school called Stratford that was our rival high school that had a similar program called Top Floor. And so this organization raised money for both of our institutions to have this extra college work, extra college and career advising work happening in our schools. And so it really was neat. We took a room, and this room that you see was, the furniture was given to us by Vanderbilt. And then of course the space we painted it, HCA came out and helped paint it and all that. But that was an old, family resource center, but before that it was actually an old child care center. At one time we had a child care center at the high school, and we were no longer using that space, and we converted that to our college and career advising center. So now college and career advising is happening all day long in the high school from 10 a.m. to 6 o'clock at night, okay? What does that do? It provides a space for kids after school also. I would have about 100 kids a day stay after school, and they were just bored. They were not athletes, they were not there for volleyball, or there for football, or there for any other reason. They just like to hang out at the school, but they weren't staying for what? Tutoring. It's like, if I could get you guys into tutoring, it'd be great. But they just wanted to hang out at school because it was a safe place and a good place to be. The culture there was great. It was a good place to be. But we were not getting them engaged in anything that would make them better. Once we built this space, all those kids funneled into that space, and then we started seeing college acceptance improve in our school due to that. So it was pretty neat. The second pocket of excellence that we built was we built a coffee shop on campus, and it cost me $0. I had one of the local churches come in, and we took an old clinic. We lost funding for our health clinic, and then we took it and took that space and built in a coffee shop. And we painted it and worked real hard and got it looking good, and we called it Cafe Maroon. The colors of Maplewood were maroon and gray, and we called it Cafe Maroon. And people were saying, oh, kids don't like coffee, they're not gonna like it. They absolutely love this space. And so this gave other kids who just wanted a quiet place to just hang out and get on the internet, a place to go and just hang out. And it was also a service learning activity. Kids who were in our entrepreneurship courses, kids who took the business courses, got to run this shop, okay? And so it became a service learning opportunity as well. So the teacher would deal with all the funding, and then of course the kids would actually sell the product. And we were doing pretty well in terms of revenue too, okay? We would sell iced coffees like this for about $2, okay? And my goal was 25 cups a day, that's $50. Well, 50 times 5 is what? $250 a week, okay? $250 a week times 4 weeks is what? $1,000 a month? And how many months of school? 10 months of school, right? How much money are we talking about? 10 grand. A lot of revenue, right? Easy. So whenever we had things like we want to do t-shirts, or if kids wanted pizza parties and things like that, we could utilize the funding that we made out of the coffee shop that kids had earned themselves to fund other small initiatives in the school. But this became another small pocket of excellence in our school, okay? Another one was the iSpot. We had a lot of kids that were into building apps and things like that, but they didn't have a place, you know? What's the place for kids who have the techie kind of mindset, for kids who like to do coding and building apps and things like that? So we built the iSpot for kids who wanted that type of experience, for kids who wanted more of a technological place, a technological kind of quirky mind. And so we worked with the Nashville Entrepreneurship Center. I took an old typing class. This was an old typing lab in our vocational building. And it was a very, very large classroom and a huge, huge space. We got some of the funding from our district. We had computers that were donated to us from another high school. Those computers you see back there were all donated, hand-me-down computers from another high school. When they got new computers, I got their hand-me-downs, yes. But that's okay. We take lemons, we make lemonade. That's what we do. But we took this space and transformed it into the Entrepreneurship Center. Then we had kids doing amazing things in there, right? We had kids working with some of the mom and pop businesses in the community to help transform and improve their businesses, such as kids started redesigning the menus in some of the restaurants. Kids started adding in some of those crowdsourcing kind of services and things like that, developing apps for them, and it was really neat. And all that happened in this space. This became another pocket of excellence in our school. Okay. Another one was we partnered with Belmont University, okay, to create the Bridges to Belmont opportunity. I'm one of the co-founders of the opportunity, Bridges to Belmont. Kids who had a 19 and a 3.0 got the opportunity to compete, and we offer 12 scholarships every year, and those scholarships were $115,000 each. And we sent 12 kids every year to Belmont University with a whopping total of $1.2 million annually. That's an annual investment, okay? And so, again, for kids who come from low SES backgrounds, this was another big opportunity for some of those kids as well. And so that was a really, really great partnership that we had with Belmont, and that partnership is now in the year 6. And we're now starting to see those kids who enter that program, they're graduating. So the first 2 years, the first 2 waves of those kids are graduating now, and we're extremely proud about that partnership. The other thing I'm proud of as a principal was I partnered with Bridgestone, and we were able to create the world's first Firestone training academy inside the high school. Maplewood High School is the only high school in the world that has its own Firestone inside of the high school. A lot of high schools have automotive programs. This high school has a Firestone store inside the school. This is the power of partnerships. So through a partnership with Bridgestone and about a $500,000 investment, they converted the high school automotive shop into a Firestone training academy. Folks, every kid's not going to college, but kids who are not going to college need the best opportunities, and this was an amazing opportunity for kids. Okay, they were earning what we call ASC certification. ASC is what we call Automotive Service Excellence Certification, okay? That's like getting your doctorate in automotive, basically, and they were getting this out of high school. So let me put this in perspective for you. You got a kid that can go to Nashville Auto Diesel College and pay $50,000 and get ASC certification. Or you got a kid that can work in Firestone, have a guaranteed job with Bridgestone because Bridgestone is training them and paying for the ASC certification. Do you all see the power of this? Can I get an amen? So these kids are walking into jobs, okay, if they get the certification, and they can make between $30,000 and $40,000 a year right out of high school. And that was another way that we created a pocket of excellence in our school. When you talk about being champions for children, now you got to design your high school or design your middle school or design your elementary school and put little pockets of excellence in there so that all kids can be successful. This was not for everybody, but for those kids who had the love for automotive, this was their pocket of excellence. It got no better than getting opportunities from Firestone. Those kids were able to intern at Firestone over the summer, and then of course, when they got of age, they were hired by Bridgestone. It's really a phenomenal opportunity. And so when you talk about breaking the cycle of poverty for kids, it gets no better than this. It really doesn't, okay? It really gets no better. So the last lesson is really about grit, and I'm about to wrap up here because I know I'm running over my time, but we define grit as the intersection between passion and persistence. We define grit as the intersection between passion and persistence. And so as we look at how college persistence rates across the country are tending to spiral, it's not an issue of talent. It's really a matter of whether or not kids have the inner belief and the drive to keep going. And so that's what we have to help kids gather, is that inner belief, develop that grit. And so here's how we help kids get grit. We help kids get grit by making sure that they understand that failure is not a permanent condition. Amen? We got to help kids understand that failure is not a permanent condition. It's not. Okay, you failed, dust yourself off, get back up, get back in the game and go again. Failure is not a permanent condition. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, saw so many kids decide to give up on going to college because they didn't get the ACT score that they wanted, and we kept pushing and pushing and pushing. Here's a young man that I recently had helped. This kid's name is Aaron, and Aaron's story is pretty cool. Kid walks by my office in Murray County, and he says, "Hey, I'm giving up on school. I just want to get my GED and move on with my life." And I said, "No, I'm not giving out any GED waivers." He's like, "Yeah, you are. You have to." I'm like, "No, I don't have to give you anything." I'm like, "Who are you and what do you want?" I'm like, "Why? What's this?" And we go into this long argument back and forth, and he just gets mad and he storms out. And I said, "Hey, wait." I said, if I could interest you in an alternate path where you could work at your own pace and still get your regular diploma, would you be interested? He said, no, not really. I said, I'll tell you what. I said, would you just go look at this program and see if you like it? And if you think this will work for you, you can get your regular diploma and we can get you there in a year and you'll graduate on time. Would you be interested? He said, well, I'll go look into it. We take him over to our school. It's called Northfield Academy. Give him an opportunity to see the program. He fell in love with the design of it and he was successful. Now, earlier I told you to get the backstory on this kid. Backstory on this kid is that his father had committed suicide and his mother was deceased also. He was living with his best friend's parents and his mom was about to try to get custody of him. So he was just miserable. He was ready to give up on life. 17 years old and he just couldn't figure things out. Literally no parents, an orphan, okay? And we have changed this young man's life. He recently graduated 2 Saturdays ago. So in conclusion, as I wrap up today, as we strive to become champions for children, we must continue to keep kids at the forefront of everything that we do. And this means that we measure everything in child benefit. Being a champion means having the tenacity to defy the odds and to go against the status quo as much as possible. This morning, I asked you to write a narrative to explain how I escaped. But I want to tell you that was just an exercise and a practice because the situation that you saw this morning was fictional. But I want you to know that each and every day you will help script the narrative for the lives that you deal with in your schools. And that's both as an educator and or a leader. I can promise you that the story won't always be filled with good times. However, but by working together as educators and leaders, we can help lots of children have a happy ending that their story deserves by developing the champion mindset for all kids. Thank you guys for listening.